So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for today's webinar. My name is Brad Boyson, and I work for the eCentre over at Massey University. And today I'm joined by Massey alumni and Wellbeing Specialist, Lauren Parsons. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Brad, and for hosting.
Today we're going to be talking about pivoting, adapting and thriving in times of change. And Lauren will be sharing her personal journey with us up to this point. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. As Lauren mentioned before, if you do have any questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Alternatively, we will probably be using the chat as well, so just keep an eye on that. Lauren may pop some questions in there, looking for feedback from all of you, so please do keep an eye on that. Lauren, I'd like to start off. So you host a podcast called Thrive TV, which, by the way, I highly recommend that the audience checks out. You can find that on Lauren's website, laurenparsonswellbeing.com, or just search on YouTube and it'll come up as well. On your podcast, though, you've got a this and that segment, so your listeners can get to know guests a little better. I'd like to turn the tables.
Oh, nice. I like it.
This will allow us to know you a little bit better.
Cool.
So, if it's okay with you, I've got 10 rapid fire questions that I'd like to send your way.
Sure thing.
So firstly, are you a morning or night person?
Night. Naturally a night owl.
Talking or texting?
Talking.
Favorite day of the week?
Oh, I think Friday. Friday, looking forward to the weekend. Yeah.
Good answer. Cats or dogs?
Cats. Yeah, we have a kitten called Ripples.
Good. Invisibility or super strength?
Oh, definitely super strength. I think invisibility could be very dangerous.
Giving presents or getting presents?
Both, but based on the 5 love languages, gifts is one of my love languages, so I love both giving and receiving really thoughtful gifts. Yeah.
Indoors or outdoors?
Outdoors, 100%.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at keeping secrets?
Oh, I'm not perfect, I'd say. I'm probably about a 9 though. I think if it's important, yeah.
That's pretty good. Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Again, I'd say both, maybe dark chocolate.
Okay. And last but not least, broccoli or cauliflower?
Broccoli.
Fantastic. Alrighty. As I mentioned before, everyone, my guest today is Lauren. She's a wellbeing specialist with over 20 years experience. She's a TEDx talker, an author, consultant, and host of Thrive TV podcast and show, which I just spoke about briefly before. Lauren specializes in boosting people's health, energy, and productivity, and helping organizations thrive. As a mother of 3, she knows how full-on life can get, and her practical solutions have helped thousands of busy people feel vibrant, confident, and energized to be able to perform at their peak. I'm sure she'll inspire us today. Again, welcome along, Lauren. It's a pleasure to have you here. Please tell us a bit more about how you've got to where you are today.
Oh, thank you so much, Brad. Yeah, it's great to connect in with you. Before I launch into that, I would just love to invite anyone that's just joined us. I'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. Just makes it a bit more of a friendly conversation. And for those that perhaps already have introduced themselves, tell me a bit about what you have done or are doing as an entrepreneur. Really interested to make sure that anything that I share is going to be helpful for you today. So whether you've got a startup idea or you've already started something, or perhaps you're studying it, or perhaps you're lecturing on it, be really keen to hear. So I am originally from the Manawatu, and I grew up in Palmerston North, and actually I'm very linked in with Massey, bit of a Massey family, because my 2 older brothers went to Massey University, I went to Massey, both of my parents worked at Massey for the majority of their careers. So my dad is Professor Dave West, he was a vet lecturer and wrote the book on sheep disease apparently, and my mum was a soil scientist and worked in the Redette building and in soil science there. So I've spent a lot of time in and out of Massey. I learned to drive cars in the car park at Massey. I'm very, very linked in with it, and it's a real privilege to be back with you today. When I want to start right back actually, when I was at school growing up in Palmerston North, I was that shy, unsporty kid who I can remember just being so scared of PE class. And I can recall one day I'm standing there in my PE class, teacher says, hey, you guys just pick people to be on the teams for this next game, okay? And my classmates say, oh, well, I'll pick you, and I want you, and I'll pick you, and I want you, and I want you, and I want you. And I'm left here, the last one standing, just wishing that the ground would swallow me up, because all I want to do is cry, and I don't want anyone to see that. And that happened to me over and over again, where I was the last one to be picked. I would try and be sick, or I'd end up being sick on team sports days, do anything that I could to avoid it. And so that stuck with me all the way through school. I really lacked confidence in myself, especially physically. And when I was 18, I went overseas on a high school exchange to France and had a really amazing time with an incredible host family just living east of Paris for a year. Learned to become fluent in French, and actually came back to Massey and did my BBS, my business studies, and a double degree with French as well, and then went on to do a postgrad in HR. So that was back in 1999 to 2002 that I was there on campus. But while I was there, when I came back to New Zealand after my exchange, I went to Massey, and just like all my friends, I joined the gym, the Massey Rec Centre. This is the Turitea campus. And I was still really intimidated by the gym. Like, I think I just joined because everyone else was doing it, but I can recall walking in there past the reception, walking in past the big sports hall and looking in where there were these people in there, and they had these bars on their shoulders with these circular things at the ends of the bars, and they were doing these movements up and down. And I can literally recall walking past that, looking in there and thinking, oh, I could never do that. Like, I could never do that. And I'll just go down to the little circuit room at the back. It was a bit of a rabbit warren to get there back in those days. And I would just hide away, just doing my little and my little just little exercise. I didn't even know what they were called. And one day a friend dragged me along to a step aerobics class, and I went. And I found that even though I didn't get all the moves, I actually picked up a bit of it, and that I had fun. So after going back a few times, they said, if you want to be an instructor, come and see us afterwards. So I did. And before I knew it, I was actually up the front teaching and leading for other people to get into fitness and movement. And that was really life-changing for me. And going through and doing that instructor training course taught me three key things. Well, first, I just found out that I actually had enough rhythm to do choreography. So that was a bonus. But the second thing was really important. That was that I discovered someone that believed in me. And that was Amy, my boss at the time. And she was amazing. But a few months later, she actually left and moved overseas. And they said, hey, Lauren, do you want to fill in as the temporary aerobics instructor, aerobics manager, I should say? And so I said yes. And after a few months, they said, oh, you're doing a pretty good job at that, Lauren. You can just carry on. But anyhow, coming back to those three things, the first one I found I had rhythm. The second one, I found someone that believed in me. And the third thing was that I discovered through that experience that I was capable of more than I first imagined. And that is something that I believe is true for all of us, that you are capable of so much more than you could ever imagine. And, you know, if there's some dream that you have to launch a product or a service, to kickstart a business, to grow your entrepreneurial skills, to help people with whatever it is that you want to do, you absolutely can. And one of the reasons that I know that that is true is that if little old Lauren Parsons from Palmerston North, New Zealand, that shy, unsporty kid, was always last to be picked in team sports, if I can go on to help thousands of people boost their health and happiness and get to speak about it on a TEDx stage in New York, then you can do anything. You really, really can. So I want to start with that, and that's a story that I have a privilege to share really often when I speak. The other thing I always share is my vision, which is to equip and inspire you to truly boost your health and happiness for life. And I see those things as being inextricably linked. We can't have one without the other. And the thing I really want to do is create a positive ripple that goes out into the world. So if there's one thing you take away today, that you can use that in your own life, that it can make an impact for those around you through the example that you give, and together we can create a positive ripple. So I want to thank you for being here today. And today I don't plan to go into any of my normal content, which now I work in workplace wellbeing. So I speak to businesses about stress management and resilience and leadership and productivity, and help individuals thrive so that their businesses thrive. So I'm not really going to delve into all of that content today, but you're welcome to check it out on the podcast, which I put in the chat there and at the website. What I want to do is just tell you a bit more about the journey of my career, I guess, the different things that I've done and how it's led to where I am now, and just be really honest and open and share some of the fears and failures and the ways that I've not done so well and the lessons that I've learned along the way. So once I'd finished at Massey, I actually met my husband while I was there, my now husband, and he is an officer in the New Zealand Army. So because of that, through our 17 years of marriage, 20 years that we've known each other, we've actually moved 11 cities 11 times, 6 times internationally. So we went from meeting and living in Palmerston North to going down to Burnham, Christchurch, then to going to Paris, France. From Paris, went to Waiouru. Yep, that was a bit of a change. From Waiouru to Linton to Palmerston North. Then we actually went overseas to Canberra, Australia for a year. Thought we were coming back to the Manawatu, but ended up going to Wellington for 2 years, and then to Canada, Ottawa, Canada for 2 years. So we're kind of doing this tour of capital cities of the world, Paris, Canberra, Ottawa, Wellington. And now we're back in my favourite place in the world, which is the Manawatu. We were in Palmerston North, now we're at Ashurst on a lifestyle property. And so the view behind me is kind of the view up the Pohanga Valley here, I believe. So during all of that time, my business has had to pivot and adapt several times. So I thought I'd just share some of the stories of what's happened over that time. But our first move was down to Christchurch. And so I ended up moving down there. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just finished my business degree, did a Massey shouted me the scholarship as a Massey scholar to do an extra year. So I did a postgrad in HR, and I was teaching aerobics. So I knew I wanted to do something with my management degree and something with teaching aerobics again. And through a whole lot of fortuitous circumstances, I was invited to a panel interview for a job at Pro Fitness Gym, which was a really big gym down there with 2 centres, 3,000 members, 100 staff. So I ended up becoming the customer service manager, and then the club manager, and then the HR manager for both of those clubs over a few years. And the most amazing thing during that time was the people. And in particular, I had a fantastic boss, Steve Barry, who again was a real inspiration. And we did a huge amount of training with an incredible gentleman called Steve Jensen, who is from Australia. And he taught us this amazing communication training around DISC profiling. If you haven't heard of DISC profiling, it's a really helpful tool to have in your life. DISC, there's lots of different models. There's the animals and the birds. You might have heard of being the lion or the Labrador or the peacock and the owl, different things like that. But essentially it's understanding what your communication style is. So through my years working at Pro Fitness, I got to learn a huge amount about communication skills, and it was used for us as part of our sales process to be able to relate to people that were coming in wanting to join the gym potentially, and how to help them to, help to build connection and rapport with them essentially and make things make sense. And so since then I've learned to apply not just the golden rule, but the platinum rule. So this is, I guess, one of my key learnings, is that in life, you might have heard of the golden rule, which is treat others as you want to be treated. But actually, there's a platinum rule that's even better than that. And that is to treat other people as they want to be treated. So what that means is to understand whatever your personality profile is. So I'm quite a high D, kind of a mix between I and C. So D is the direct, decisive, quite a typical leadership profile. It means that my weaknesses are that I'm quite impatient, that I'm not so interested in small talk, I'm quite task focused. So some of those things can be beneficial, but all of the profiles all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And the more that I can understand myself and perhaps be able to pick up on the cues of what other people are, it means that I can soften and take more time with someone that wants to have all the chit chat, or if somebody wants all of the detail, I can go into the detail for them. So I have found that DISC training that we did, that DISC profile training, and understanding how to apply it when you meet people to use the platinum rule has been, life-changing and really foundational. Then when I was at Pro Fitness, I was there for about 4 years, at which point my boss, Steve Barry, who I mentioned, started a joint venture with some top business people from Australia to create the New Zealand College of Fitness, which is now known as Max College for Fitness Professionals. And they delivered top-rate personal training education. And it was at that point that Steve asked me, he was going through a restructure as well, and after this HR project that I had done really to establish HR, because we didn't have an HR department, it was just me, we set up a whole lot of systems in terms of our recruitment and training process and induction. And once that was in place, we didn't really need an HR manager as much as any of the other roles. So it was decentralised, and he asked me to come and step over and join the New Zealand College of Fitness as a lecturer. I'd previously done the course and the training through there, which taught me a whole lot that I didn't know just as a group exercise instructor. So then it helped me to help my trainers out on the gym floor. But it was a really big choice, because when he asked me to go to the College of Fitness, it was actually earning less money, but I had this sort of sense that this could be really big and really enjoyable for me. And there's actually a painting that I have on the wall beside my bedroom that I remember picking up at the Christchurch markets one day when I was going through this period of trying to make this decision. And you might have these different points along your entrepreneurial journey where you have to try and choose, oh, what's the next step? And because the thing was that I could have stayed in the business as a club manager within the gym, or as a sales manager within the gym, and that was an option offered, or I could jump, have a lower pay rate, but be what was essentially a lecturer at the New Zealand College of Fitness. And then how one day at the Christchurch market, so I met this artist who did her own artwork, and I've got this painting, and it's a sort of a green knoll of a hill with this heart-shaped balloon floating up in the sky, and it's got a lady or a girl holding onto it with one hand, and it says on the side, life's a breeze when you follow your heart. Life's a breeze when you follow your heart. And so I guess that's another key thing that's really resonated and stayed true for me, that as long as you follow what it is that you love doing, if you follow the thing that you're really good at, that you love doing, and that you can monetize, as long as it's got all of those three things and you're finding your sweet spot. If you're just as an entrepreneur trying to find something, perhaps even something that you're good at and something you can monetize, if you don't love doing it, then it's not going to be the right direction to go. So that's, if you haven't heard of that model, that's the sweet spot model that I learned through Natalie Sisson, who's known as a suitcase entrepreneur, who's a good friend of mine in Wellington. So think about what it is that you love doing, think about what it is you're really good at doing, and then think about what you can monetize. And if you picture a Venn diagram, there's that sweet spot in the middle. So for me, that again, this wasn't an entrepreneurial step as such, but it did mean that I was having to run my own personal training business alongside being what was effectively a lecturer, because that was part of the contract. So that was really where I started my business back in 2005, where I stepped out of being solely employed, stepped into a lower paying job, but with more time to run my own business. And it's been an interesting journey, but if you always follow your heart, you always follow what you love doing, you'll find the right way. What was interesting about my role is I said I was a lecturer, but actually my job title was presenter of fun and laughter. So what we had to do was teach anatomy, physiology, nutrition, human performance through songs and dances. We would say, oh, look, it's raining radios. A radio just fell down and hit my radius. And that's the way that you learn that this bone here is your radius. And Sarah Ulmer, you remember her, was a cyclist. She'll be on her bike with her ulners here along the handlebars. And so we had different things like that, and games and songs that we would use, lots of advanced learning techniques and techniques to get people up and moving every 20 minutes. So that for me was huge grounding in terms of the presenter training skills that I learned as a lecturer there, because the college prided itself on having the most interactive, entertaining, engaging and effective learning and teaching methods, and also a real spirit of excellence. So as lecturers, we wore a suit. It was almost like being an air hostess. You had to have the colours. You had to have a black suit with some lime green visible from the front, either a neck scarf or a brooch, single jewellery, all those sort of things. And the reason that we did that was that we wanted our students to see us having a high standard of excellence, to try and lift the excellence of the whole fitness profession. So that was a real privilege to work there. And so I was there for around 4 years, personal training alongside teaching. And then again, we moved to France, and actually ended up doing something completely different, working for my host family in manufacturing business and being the debt collector. And it was really interesting, but it was good learning for my French. It was really nerve-wracking having to answer the phone, trying to keep up with phone numbers I had to write down. And if you speak French, you'll know that when people tell you 72 and you've got to write down 60 plus 12, and you get confused with all the numbers, but it boosted my confidence in my French. And I did a bit of consulting for some gyms over there that used Les Mills programs. So that was amazing, seeing, this program that's come out of New Zealand And they met me and went, oh, you're from New Zealand. Oh, Les Mills, that's amazing. So I got to do a bit of consulting when I was there. When we came back to New Zealand, we moved to Oulu and started having a family. And I also had been increasingly aware of the fact that I wanted to help people not just with their physical well-being, but with their mental well-being and with their lives, with their habit change, to actually really help them with every part of their lives. So I got qualified as a life coach through Life Coach Associates, who are based in Auckland. And that was a really intensive, amazing, and again, life-changing course. There's been a few things that I've done that I say are life-changing, you know, going on Outward Bound also was one of them earlier on. But it was a really incredible, transformative course where we did a lot of self-learning and got to learn how to help others. Because I felt quite nervous really about trying to mess around with people's thought patterns, I guess, when I didn't really have the skills, and I'm so glad I got that grounding. So from then on, that was 2008, I then started creating more and more presentations for groups, using the skills that I learned at the College of Fitness to present to groups, and started creating workplace wellbeing initiatives and programs, and found that I really enjoyed that. So for the last 12 years, I've really focused on workplace wellbeing, and also helping individuals thrive. And as I mentioned, we've moved a whole lot again as well. So when we moved to Palmerston North, I created a program called Get Fit, Feel Fabulous, which was for women, mostly for women in their 40s, 50s and 60s. And it was really great fun group sessions we did in person, really uplifting nights out where I'd get in stylists or do cooking demos. And just when that was really going very well as a business model, it was really, you know, sessions were full and that was going fantastically well. We got posted over to Australia for my husband to do his master's for a year. So that forced me to re-look at and revisit my whole business model and think, how am I going to do this from overseas? Now, we thought at the time that we were going for a year and then coming back. So I had constantly been building up my database, or my online community, as I call them. So that's one key thing. If you're starting out, one of the foundations to virtually every business is to have that database of warm leads, of people that are engaged with what you're doing, and to be able to communicate regularly with them and share valuable content. So that's something I've done for many years, is had an ongoing newsletter, and it's evolved over time and the systems to deliver it. And I'm happy to share more details about that. But what I found was I had to totally shift that Get Fit Feel Fabulous from being in person to now online, to deal with being by distance. And also we went over and had another baby. So I had my third daughter when we were living in Australia. So it was kind of a year of cocooning and focusing on family, but also creating a whole lot of online content. So I essentially set up and video recorded all of the content I used to share in person and online. I've made it into videos and then automated it into what's called an evergreen course. Initially, I ran it as blocks. So I would do a big promotion, say, right, we're going to start now. We've got a 12-week course. You can sign up and do it. And it was all by distance online, which now is so common, but back then there weren't that many online courses around. And then over time, I made it what's called evergreen, which means that you can sign up and you can start tomorrow. So that's a program that's still there, and I've had hundreds of people do that program. That's been really successful overall. But one of the big challenges with it that I've found is that because it relies on people to click the link themselves, to read the document themselves, to watch the video themselves, it does still take a lot of engagement from their side. And so one of the things that I've done over time is I've promoted that less and less. I guess it's you know, it's a few years old now, so it's not my latest product. And what I've learned as well is that there's a great profiling dynamic by Roger Hamilton that you may have heard of as talent dynamics or as wealth dynamics. So if you head over to talentdynamics.com, I think it is, you can do a profile test, and it's something I heard about many years ago, and I literally just did the test yesterday, and I've discovered, confirmed, that I definitely am a creator, which is it's got 9 different profiles, and it looks at your people focus versus task focus and a whole lot of different things. And essentially wealth dynamics or talent dynamics explains that if you can tap into the strengths that you have, much like the disc profiles, and you can work in alignment with those and get other people on your team to support you. So for example, I'm a creator, so I'm great at coming up with ideas, creating products, but not always so good at following through, marketing them and making the most of them. What I then need to do is have someone else in my team who's a couple of profiles around from me that could be a supporter to help market them, and someone else who's a couple of profiles the other direction on this profile tool to help me to do all the back end to dot the I's and cross the T's. And it's interesting because I do think of myself as quite organised and a list maker, but I've realised that I still can have some help with follow through. So anyhow, I feel like I've gone, I don't know what I was already talking about for that. But yeah, you're coming back to the online course. So I created that online course. That was one way of pivoting, was to take everything I did in person and then do it online. So I think that, you know, right now in the current climate that we're in, obviously a lot of people are talking about pivoting, and maybe I'll finish off by linking it to the current, how I've been pivoting most recently. But one of the other keys I want to share is to always test and measure what works for your audience. So that Get Fit Feel Fabulous, for example, I did a focus group with a whole lot of ladies that were doing an early version of the program that didn't have a name, didn't have a brand, didn't have a logo, and they actually helped me come up with the name, and we came up with the logo and all those little steps. By the way, just having a logo is not all of what your brand is. Your brand is a whole lot more, and it's so important to have such a clear target market and then know how you can serve them. And the more that you can niche it, the more you can help people really powerfully, because if you try to help everyone, then you really help no one, all of that. So if you haven't really heard about that and you haven't got to grips with who your target market is in your business and in your journey, that is a really key step, as well as knowing your vision. And if you haven't already seen Simon Sinek's TED Talk, which is how great leaders inspire action, or if you just Google Simon Sinek TED Talk and the power of why, he talks about how people buy what you do. People buy why you do what you do, not what you do or how you do it. So if you step one for every entrepreneur, I believe, is to watch that video and really think about why you do what you do and how you can share your story. You know, as I mentioned, why I do what I do is that I believe that everyone deserves to thrive. And I know that if I can help individuals thrive, that actually helps a whole organization to thrive. And that's what drives me. So when I come back to that testing and measuring, asking your audience what they want. So for Get Fit Feel Fabulous, I created something that people did want, but then I found a frustration with it as a business owner, because I feel like, but the completion rates aren't at 100%. Like, somebody buys this product and then they don't actually follow through and do it all. That's heartbreaking for me. So what I've created more recently, for example, is actually doing group coaching, where I connect actually via Zoom, but where we can all see and hear one another, and we meet in person. I actually just finished a session this morning, 11 to 12, met with a group of 8 ladies, and we get to connect regularly every fortnight so that I can share some key learnings. They can commit to what they're going to do, and then the next session I can ask them, okay, so what did you get out of that? And the reason that I came up with that program is that about 3 years ago, I sent out a question to my online community, my database, and said, if you could ask me just one question, what would it be? And it was really, really fascinating to see what the answers were that came through. And what was most interesting was that I had about a dozen people out of about 100 responses. I had a dozen people that said, oh, Lauren, how do you manage to juggle home and work and life and all of those things? How do you juggle it all and keep everything going? And I had so many people that almost word for word asked that same question. So I thought, this is something people need help with. So I spent some time brainstorming what are the key things that I do to help juggle everything, keep it in balance. And I created a 6-week coaching program, and I ran that, and that worked well. But 2 of the modules were really too heavy, so I made it into an 8-week program. So you've got to constantly adapt. And then I ran it weekly, and then it was too close together. There wasn't time enough to make it work. So now I run it fortnightly. So I think I'm on the 6th iteration of running that program. And it's great because I spent a lot of time up front creating it and then refining it. But now I know it's a program that works incredibly well. It's called Overcome the Overwhelm. And so that speaks to that pain point that so many people have, that challenge, that problem of feeling overwhelmed. What do they do? And I love delivering it because of the in-person accountability. It allows me to know that I'm making a difference. It's also something I've done. I've moved away from one-on-one coaching to doing really just group coaching. And that's because it's obviously it's much more highly leveraged, so that I can be helping 8 people at once and they're paying X amount. And so for me, it's a lot better business model, but I'm making more revenue per hour that I'm investing, but it's also a great price point for everyone involved because they're not paying nearly as much as what they would for individual. So that's kind of a little bit more of what I've been doing more recently. And one of I'll just finish off my story and then we'll open up for some questions. So start thinking if you have any questions, I'm really keen to answer them, is the biggest challenge I've faced most recently has been pivoting and shifting from helping women primarily. So I mentioned was my key target market, women in their 40s, 50s and 60s who wanted to boost their health and well-being, to now helping businesses. And so I've really had to shift over and realize, I shouldn't just be doing articles that help individuals. I want to be doing articles and putting out marketing and information that's helpful to HR managers, to business owners, because that is now who I help. That's my new target market. And what I found though is so inspiring is that, for example, my TED talk was about this idea to snack on exercise, which is essentially around, what if we could all snack on 4 minutes of exercise a day and shift our paradigm around exercise, how much that could boost our mood, our mental well-being, our health, and also our productivity, innovation, creativity. So that idea, for example, is something that I want to spread. But if I just share it with one person, then they go, oh, okay, great idea, Lauren. They get it inspired when they're with me, perhaps, but then on their own and in a cubicle, they feel a bit silly. So I love working with workplaces, because if I can help the leadership team to create a culture change where it becomes normal to get up and snack on exercise, that is changing many lives and many families' lives. So that is why I really love what I do now. So those are just some of the things that say, follow your heart, use the platinum rule, understand yourself, understand others, be prepared to pivot in everything that you do, test and measure what you do, find out what works, ask your audience what they're interested in, and then focus what you do around that. Those are some of the key learnings. And I feel like I haven't actually really shared many failures with you, but there have been a lot of failures and a lot of struggles along the way. There have been times that I've tried to launch online programs, online courses, and just had zero response, or one or two. One time I tried to launch a group coaching program and I had one person respond and pay. And I was like, now what do I do? I ended up making an arrangement with them and doing something one-on-one for a shorter time. But there's certainly been lots of highs and lows. And I think as an entrepreneur, the journey is never from here to here. The journey always looks like this, even on a daily basis sometimes, and so much of success is based around mindset. So I guess the key around that is get yourself a great coach, surround yourself with fantastic like-minded people, preaching the converted here, because you're here tuning in to learnings and opportunities like this, and know that we all have our down days, we all have our challenging days. If you haven't heard of Impostor Syndrome, then get yourself equipped on that. Watch Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. Cuddy is Cuddy, where she talks about Impostor Syndrome, and understand that you really can, what she says is, fake it till you become it. Be the person that you aspire to be, and before you know it, you'll be able to do the things that you really want to do. Yeah, so anyway, I know that you said, maybe chat for half an hour and then open for questions. So I'll pause there and just open up for your questions first, Brad, and also invite, if you want to put in any comments or questions in the chat and make this really interactive, that would be great.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. Thank you so much, Lauren. And we're getting a whole lot of good questions through already. But selfishly, I want to get a couple of my questions in there first. So I just want to dive a little bit deeper on a couple of comments you made. So you mentioned being that shy kid on the playground, the last to be picked for the sports team kind of thing. This is a challenge a lot of entrepreneurs face almost on a daily basis, right? They're talking to the naysayers who are saying, you can't do that, that's impossible, why would you even try to do that? Do you have any advice or tips to help people overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think that there will always be some naysayers. We used to have an analogy of, there's climbers, campers and pullers in the world. And if you're trying to climb a mountain, as you're climbing up, there'll be other people climbing alongside you, and they're fantastic. There'll also be lovely people called campers, and they're the ones that might build their campsite and build up the fire and say, oh yeah, I'm going to climb a mountain one day, but they never quite actually get started. And then there'll be pullers as well. There'll be people that, for whatever reason, will be pulling you back. And the more that you climb, the more there'll be people pulling you back. And sometimes it's with the best intention. Sometimes it's the people that are the closest to you. And the reason they pull you back is they go, oh, Lauren, I don't want you to get hurt. What if you fall over? What if you stumble? What if it doesn't work? So I would say surround yourself with the sort of people that are going to help you to climb, and be very aware of that. And that's just, there's huge expansion on that model, but that's a very quick overview. And then I would say, look at your strengths and look at your target market, and find a way that you can quickly test and fail fast. You might have heard of this philosophy of test, and if you're going to fail fast, learn from that failure and then pivot and move on, or just slightly realign. It might not be that your whole product, your whole service is a failure. It might just be that the way that you're going to deliver it isn't going to work, or there's some assumption that you've made about your customer's behavior that is not actually quite matched. So the other thing I would say is know your numbers and look at your numbers, because your numbers will tell you whether you're heading towards failure or not, and keep coming back to that. And again, as I say, have a coach, have a sounding board who can be there to help you to, one, bolster your confidence, because that's a key thing that every coach does, is believe in you, believe in your dreams, and help you believe in them yourself. And two, somebody to ask those questions to say, hey, you know, seems like you're putting a lot of effort into this part of your business, but that's only 10% of your revenue at the moment. Should you be focusing here? So it's really important to have somebody external to help you get clarity when you can't see the wood for the trees. Yeah, but I think the more that you climb, the more that you'll have people trying to pull you back. So always remember that. And, you know, there's so many amazing stories of people, you know, the whole, you know, 1,000 times to try and get the light bulb to work. All of the great successes that you see out there. And if you see me and you think, oh, wow, that's so successful, you know, wow, you've done TED Talk, how, you know, I could never do that. Actually, you can, because absolutely anyone can, really. Whatever it is that you want to do, if you stay focused on it and you've got a good team around you, and a team that will be honest with you and tell you, actually, this really isn't going to work for whatever reason, listen to them, keep yourself surrounded by them, and you will get there. And it may be you have to pivot and change slightly from what you thought it was going to be, but you will make it happen if you have a clear vision.
That's great advice, thank you. One of the, when we look at startup culture, one of the things people wear is a bit of a badge of honor is how many hours I've worked this week, right? I know, you know, Marissa Mayer, CEO of Yahoo, went on social media and bragged about working 120 hours a week. I mean, madness, in my opinion. But how should entrepreneurs be finding balance in their lives, and not necessarily just within their business, but, you know, juggling family and work and, you know, all those kind of things?
Yeah, great question. And I think it really comes down to an individual. I've got 3 children who are all primary school age, under 11. And so life is busy. It's not quite as busy as it was when they were toddlers and babies, but it takes a huge amount of time. And obviously we've just come through this lockdown period, and some of the highlights have been reading stories with my girls and playing tennis in the driveway, and, you know, just getting outdoors and doing things with them. So that's a huge priority for me. At the same time, I'm very task focused, and it's very easy when you have your own business to just keep going. I'll just get this one more thing done. So setting clear boundaries, I think, is vital, absolutely vital. And I often talk a lot about self-care and making sure that you actually are taking time to fill your own tank up and having what I call non-negotiables. So for example, for me, my morning routine, actually, when you ask me that morning or nighttime person, I'm naturally a night owl, but I've become quite a morning person through discipline, because I get up early, I do a morning stretch routine with uplifting music on, and I focus on my breathing and gratitude and set my intention for the day for about 4 minutes, the length of one song, and then I do my hour's work. And that's one of my non-negotiables, and that power hour that I get in after that is my most productive time of the day. My other 2 non-negotiables are having a 4-second hug with everyone in my bubble, and going for a walk for 20 or 30 minutes, or getting outdoors in sunlight for 20 or 30 minutes every day. And those might sound like simple little things, but by making sure that they happen, I know that I can actually keep up with the demands of all the things I want to achieve. So I think definitely if you are working long hours and being a martyr, that is actually a personality type, and it's the A type, you know, being driven. You really need to regain balance in your life and reassess how you want life to be. First of all, like, picture how do you want your life to be, and then structure the way that you create your business around that. Find ways to leverage your time. Don't be afraid to outsource, because the biggest growth you'll have is once you start outsourcing to team, whether that's just like an online contractor, that might be an overseas contractor through Upwork. I use people like that to do things like video editing. Start small with that. The more that you outsource and delegate, the more that you'll allow time for you to do the higher value activities that will grow your business.
Great. Very, very useful advice. Thank you. Let's switch to some audience questions now. Lauren, what do you think is going to be some of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs as we come out of this COVID-19 crisis, with so many industries being affected at the moment?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, everyone's affected differently. And for me, most of my work, like 80% of my income is from speaking, and so I had a whole calendar full of events. I was so thrilled for this year that, because I've only been back in New Zealand since January, and I'm just getting back and building that speaking business. So it was really heartbreaking to see 4 months be essentially cancelled, or not cancelled, actually postponed. So I've had to pivot and change what I'm doing, and I think a lot of businesses have, and obviously it'll be different depending on what it is that's your target or service. One of the challenges is that there's been a bit of a mentality out there, and I covered this with Natalie Sisson actually in the interview that we did on Thrive TV show. There's been a bit of an overwhelming amount of people putting out discounts or free content, or just totally changing what they're doing and saying, oh, I can do this, I'm going to offer this offer. And it was really Natalie Sisson that pointed that out to me, that may be okay to do, but do bear in mind that there are still a lot of people that still have stable jobs that are wanting to spend and invest locally. There's still a demand for the products and services that you have. So don't feel like you've just got to suddenly undercut everything that you do. I think that's important, that we still retain value in what we're offering. And I'm still trying to figure that out as well myself. What's the value and the price point for an online presentation as opposed to an in-person presentation? Where does that settle? Because there's pros and cons with both, really. So I think the biggest thing is to stay true to what your vision is, because one of the things we can do is be very reactionary and think, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to offer this, I've got to do this thing that relates to the current situation. And if that is still in your lane, then that is great. If it's still in line with your vision. But if it's taking you off on a real tangent, just think about what the time and energy and effort that you put into that is going to mean for you achieving your business goals. So it's a really good time for us to pause, reflect, think about the way that we work. Obviously, more remote work and different ways of working will be important. But really think about it from your customer's point of view and ask them, test and measure again, ask them what is it that they want and need right now, and think about how you can deliver it, whether that looks different. I know it's hard to answer it picturing there's such a broad range of different industries and products we may have, but I think yes, pivot, but pivot in line still with your vision is probably the most important thing. And if you want to find out more, watch that interview. It's called How to Be Proactive, Not Reactive in Business. And it was myself interviewing Natalie Sisson, who is an amazing entrepreneur.
Okay. I'll definitely be checking that out. As you've moved around the world with your family, what advice have you given your children regarding being adaptable to change? And as a follow-up, how does that apply to business people? And you give them the same advice?
I think the great thing about challenges is that they just naturally build resilience. Challenges strengthen our resilience, that they're forced. My eldest daughter has been to 4 different schools. She started school in Australia. She then went to a school in Wellington. She then went to a school in Canada mid-year, had to switch years. Actually 5 schools. Then she went to a school in Palmerston North, and now she's at a different school in Palmerston North. So she's had a lot of change and a lot of adaptability, and she's naturally very introverted, and it's not always been easy for her. So as a family, we just have our family motto and our family values and things like, that as a team that we stick together and all of those things. And I guess we've highlighted to them as well, talked through those pros and cons and acknowledged how they've felt. So in business right now, I think it's really important, all of us actually, whether you've got your own business or not, all of us, we have to grieve the loss of our plans and dreams that we had for this year, for this period. We've all had losses in different ways, lost freedom, had things that have been cancelled and changed. So it's actually important to pause and take a moment to grieve for the things that you might have lost in your business and on your journey. And then, once you've done that, to then start thinking, what am I going to do moving ahead? And we know that, we can choose whether we have a pessimistic or optimistic outlook. And the best place to be in to move through challenging times is to be a realistic optimist. Not a pessimist that looks at the glass half empty, and not just a create, I don't know how to describe it, but an optimist that's overly optimistic, that as if everything's fine, but to be a realistic optimist, to look at the options and plan for, worst case, most likely case scenario.
Great. You've written a book titled Real Food, Less Fuss. I love the title, by the way. Can you give us some insight into the process of writing and publishing a book? As someone who would love to be able to write, I'm a terrible writer. maybe you could share some kind of insights there if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So my book, Real Food Less Fuss, actually started writing that when we were in Australia and then came to New Zealand. And I also have this book, Snack on Exercise, that I'd like to write and haven't written yet. And I sort of got to the point of going, right, I've got to make this happen. So I was mountain biking in the Rimatakas with a friend, Bronnie, and she said to me, oh, Lauren, what's your word for the year? And I said, what? What do you mean? This is 5 years ago. And she said, what's your word for the year? You know, your word to define the year. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And anyway, on the next downhill, I thought about it. And I said, oh, I think my word is focus. And so in 2016, my word for the year was, oh, you've lost me? No.
Are you still with us, Lauren?
Yes. Can you hear me? I am still here, but I don't know if you can hear me. You've frozen up. Oh. Oh, I'm not sure. I wonder, actually, can you guys, oh, okay, so Sheree's still there. Okay, so maybe we've just lost Brad. Okay, sorry, I was just messaging him. Okay, still hearing me. Great, thanks, guys. So I had this word for the year, and the word was focus, and that was hugely important because to get the book published, I needed a huge focus. So I self-published the book, and you know, that could be a whole big topic in and of itself, but essentially I had to plan out the concept, again, think about who was the audience, plan out the marketing. I launched it with a Kickstarter, which is essentially a way to do pre-sales. So I had pre-sales at different price points, $30 for one book, $90 for 3 books, right up to like, I think $1,000 for a coaching package in the book. So we managed to do a pre-sale, and the way Kickstarter works is you have to achieve your goal or else you get nothing. So my goal was $5,000, and we managed to sell about $11,000 in the pre-sale. Hi, Brad. I think you just dropped off, but everyone else is still here, so we've just been continuing on.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'm so sorry about that. My internet dropped out.
That's
okay. The first time that's ever happened.
No worries. So we're just talking about the book. So I did the pre-sale with Kickstarter, and that was great because it gave me that $11,000 funding to help to pay for obviously the fixed costs of the photography, design, the layout, the cover, and then the printing. And because digital printing now is more common, we actually agreed a total print amount, but they ran it in print lots of 500 books at a time. So that also helped us space that out. Before I started, someone said, oh, the most number of books people tend to sell is about 200 books, which was really disappointing because I was like, well, there's no way that I can create, you know, I didn't bring a copy out, but, you know, a full page, 220 page, large, full color, like it's actually not a cookbook, but it's got a huge amount of recipes and all of the photos. There's no way that would work with 200 copies, but fortunately that wasn't the case. We're almost sold out. I printed 1,500 and I've got about 80 left in the cupboard. But that was awesome to be able to be a launching pad, but at the same time it was a bit of a failure, and I'll share why. So it was great because I got to be interviewed by Paul Henry on TV, I got to be in the Next magazine, I got to do a national speaking tour around 8 different cities and sold hundreds of copies, which was fantastic. However, the biggest challenge was that I kind of did the book to get it out the way so I could move on to the next book, but I haven't got there to that one yet. And now I've moved it further away from helping people with nutrition, physical well-being. I still do a bit of that, but I'm more focused on workplace well-being. And sometimes I'll do sessions on nutrition, which is great, and it ties in really well. But right now, it's not actually the best book to position what I do. So it's a bit of a shame that a lot of time and effort went into that, and then I've pivoted away. But that is what happens along the journey as well. So really what I need to do now is create things that are more aligned with what I do. And actually, one thing I think I do have here is one thing I have created is this Live Well, Work Well book, which you're all welcome to grab a copy of, by the way, to grab the ebook of this. So if you head to laurenparsonswellbeing.com, this is actually what I call, what's called a lead magnet. It's what I give away as a great little guide to these 5 Live Well principles that I've created. And so when people download it, like you'll get a set of the 5 Live Well principles, you'll get an explanation of each one and a checklist. So it's a great little book, and I've obviously got some printed. What would be better for me now is a book to position myself, however, would be like a really, you know, a good, thick, solid book that really describes these principles in detail. So at some point I will do that, and that will be a better positioning piece for me, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's a whole lot more we could say about the book publication process, but there was a lot I had to learn along the way, and I'd say I'd probably still self-publish again, but there's a few things I'd do differently to understand how the supply chains work into stores a bit better if I did it again. Oh, and Brad, sorry, you're on mute. Yeah.
Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Living here, where we've just moved in January, so we've got 10 acres just out of Ashurst. You know, kids will be in school, still travelling and working with businesses, doing workplace wellbeing, having a bigger team working with me, helping me to do that, and having that book written. So very much more of the same, but I do want to continue to work with, I guess, bigger companies throughout New Zealand, and I do want to work mostly in New Zealand because travel is great, but it becomes very time consuming and obviously time away from family. So continuing a lot of what I've been currently doing, but being able to I guess, yeah, continue with Thrive TV show, for example, but be able to interview people that right now would just, you know, or everyone I interview, they kind of give me tingles, but be able to interview some big names on there, to be able to help some larger organisations. You know, yeah, there's a lot of plans and schemes that I have, I guess, that plans and dreams that I want to bring to fruition, but being able to help more and more people boost their health and happiness, still continuing on, that's still always going to be the vision.
Right. Playing devil's advocate, you mentioned turning your passion into a career or a business. Is there a risk, though, that by turning a passion or a hobby into career or business, that it stops becoming a passion or a hobby at that stage and it becomes work? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's great. And, you know, I think of, is it Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, where he talks about how people get really good at doing something and then they start a business around it. They end up being the manager and other people are doing the fun stuff. So you've got to make sure that you find something that as a business model fits, and that if there are things that you're just passionate about and love doing, like I love hosting dinner parties, I love playing board games, for example, I love spending time outdoors. So those are all things I do that don't really relate to work. So I think you still have your passions that you love doing in your spare time and you protect that time, but you've got to firmly believe in the vision of what it is that your business, your entrepreneurial goals achieve. You've got to understand your why, because that's got to drive you. So it doesn't have to be your hobby. And obviously, I think for many years I was just sort of dabbling in and out of motherhood, treating my business as a bit of a hobby alongside, whereas now I feel like, oh, I'm actually really have a business. I really have a team. I have financial goals, and that's only been in the last few years that I've been more focused, and it has been a big mindset shift that's helped the business to absolutely grow as well.
Great. Gavin in the chat asks, do you feel there's a gap in specialist coaching as opposed to mentoring or advising, which is more common? And if so, how might we begin to fill that gap?
Yeah, I think that all coaches should specialize in an area, because there's so many coaches out there. It's interesting being a coach. I do a little bit of coaching, but mostly I do more consulting and speaking. But I love coaching, and for me, a great coach has got to have a key area, and that will obviously relate to whatever your story and your area of expertise is. So the more that every single coach in the world can specialize, the more that we can all serve in a better way. So I think definitely if there's an area that you are a specialist in, the more you can niche it down, the more effective you'll be. There'll be some people that specialize in marital coaching, but not just that, specializing in helping blended families, relationship coaching for blended families or something like that. So having a really specific small niche in what it is that you do as a coach, and relating it to your story. Everything's got to relate to your story and the way that you share that. So there's a great book, I think it's called Story Brand, and I can't recall the name of the author, but where they talk about how to promote what you do as the story. And as he says at the start, it does ruin every single movie you watch, because you realize that all movies have a basic same plot, and how to share your business story as part of that plot, and to know that you're not the hero in the story, your client's the hero and you are the guide. So again, I know I'm just touching on that really briefly, but check out that book. It's a really great one. And I had Katrina Pace, who's a New Zealander who does copywriting. She helped me with the copywriting for my website using that kind of model, so that, for example, my about page, you'll notice, isn't just my story. It's about how I help So your about page shouldn't just be about you, it should be about how you help others. Anyway, that's another whole topic. Yeah.
I think we'll finish off with this question. This is probably the most interesting one I've got so far. So if you could invite 3 people to dinner, firstly, who would they be and why? Secondly, who would you have cook the meal?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great question.
It's just on the end, isn't it?
That's so tricky. Okay. Oh, who comes to mind? You know, it's Nelson Mandela comes to mind. I mean, wouldn't that just be amazing to meet him, spend time with him? Who would I really like to meet? I'd really like Jamie Oliver to cook it, because then I get to hang out with him too. Like, yeah, that would be great. I really love Jamie Oliver. I really love his recipes, his way of delivering, his overcoming dyslexia and the huge success he's had. Yeah, it's huge inspiration. So he could almost be one of the guests at the table. We'll say he's cooking it, because then I get more. Nelson Mandela, Jamie Oliver, Brene Brown. That would be amazing. Oh my goodness. And I don't know, so many people. I'm going to say Tony. I'm going to say Mel Robbins. Actually, I was almost about Tony Robbins. Mel Robbins. Yeah, she's pretty amazing, and that would be, yeah. So if you haven't heard of Mel Robbins, she's an amazing speaker in the States as well, and did a great TED talk on stop screwing yourself over. Interesting. It's a great question.
Yes. Lauren, this has been a very inspiring hour. Thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to follow you online, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so just head over to laurenparsonswellbeing.com. As I say, I'd love to send you out a copy of this as an ebook. And on all of the social media platforms, on Facebook, I'm Lauren Parsons Wellbeing. And on all of the others, I'm Lauren Parsons NZ. So on Instagram and Twitter, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Just if you want to send me a message by LinkedIn, let me know that you watched this today. That'd be great. Thank you for sticking with us through the hour. I appreciate your time and being here, and I hope that it's given you some nuggets of wisdom for your entrepreneurial journey and some inspiration to continue on. If I can help with anything else, let me know. And I know that Nicola also administers the internship program. So if there's any of you in here that have skills and expertise and you feel like we'd be a good fit and you'd like to find out more about that, then be keen to look at some interns to come in and work with me as we grow and achieve those goals and dreams as well. So thanks so much for the opportunity to be here today. Really appreciate it, guys.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Great. Thanks, guys.